Someone who worked for the company later testified about what management knew before construction began. He said, "I knew they was going to kill them within 5 years. I didn't know they was going to kill them so quick." This is the story of the Hawk's Nest Tunnel, the worst industrial disaster in American history that most people have never heard of. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic photographs to life, allowing us to move through Gauley Bridge, West Virginia, as it appeared in 1930. There is a tunnel in these mountains. It still operates today. More than 3,000 men built it. The tunnel is fine. The New River follows a path through the Appalachian Mountains that it has followed for hundreds of millions of years. In 1927, Union Carbide's subsidiary, the New Kanawha Power Company, proposed diverting part of it. The plan called for a tunnel through Gauley Mountain, 3 miles east of the river's course. The diverted water would drop through a vertical shaft and drive turbines. The electricity would power Union Carbide's chemical plants at Alloy, a few miles downstream. The contract to build the tunnel went to a Virginia company, Reinhardt and Dennis. They had built tunnels before. They brought in equipment, set up work camps along the river, and began recruiting. Gauley Bridge in 1930 had a population of roughly 400 people. It was a small town along a rail line in a county where work was scarce. The Depression had arrived. Reinhardt and Dennis recruiters drove through Virginia, Georgia, and Alabama, promising wages. The men they hired were mostly black, mostly from the rural South. The pay was 25 cents an hour. Workers were expected to put in 60 hours a week. Most stayed. They had no way back. By the spring of 1930, there were more than 3,000 men working the tunnel site. The drilling began from both ends of the mountain simultaneously. Inside the tunnel, workers operated pneumatic drills. The drills bored into rock. The rock was blasted. The debris was hauled out. The cycle repeated. What no one told the workers, and what company geologists knew within the first weeks of drilling, was that the rock inside Gauley Mountain was nearly pure silicon dioxide. The silica content was among the highest ever recorded in tunnel construction in the United States. This was not ordinary tunnel rock. This discovery created a problem, and then it created an opportunity. Silicon dioxide was a valuable raw material for Union Carbide's ferrosilicon furnaces at Alloy. The rock they were blasting through was, essentially, industrial ore. The tunnel was not simply being excavated, it was being mined. The company increased the pace of work. Shifts extended. The drilling ran 24 hours a day. Drilling through high silica rock produces a specific kind of dust, humidatory. The particles are microscopic. They float in the air for hours. When inhaled, they lodge in the lung tissue. The body cannot break them down. Over time, the crystals accumulate. Scar tissue forms around them. The lungs harden. This process is called silicosis. In most industrial settings, silicosis develops over 10 to 20 years of repeated exposure. Inside Hawk's Nest Tunnel in 1930, workers were breathing dust with silica concentrations so high that the progression compressed. Men who started work healthy in the spring were showing symptoms by summer. The tunnel was not adequately ventilated. Fans existed at the entrance. They were not always running. Workers reported that inside the tunnel, visibility was sometimes less than the length of a man's arm. The dust was not dampened with water during drilling, which would have suppressed it. This would have slowed the work. No respirators were issued. Arthur Payton was from Virginia. He was in his 30s when he came to Gauley Bridge to work. He drilled rock inside the mountain for several months. He was not told what was in the rock. He was not told what the dust might do. By the end of 1930, Peyton was coughing. By 1931, he could not work. By 1933, he could not walk far without stopping. In 1936, he testified before a congressional subcommittee in Washington. He described going into the tunnel healthy and coming out sick. He described watching other men get sick around him. He described being told his condition was pneumonia. He was not alone in testifying. He was one of the few still alive to do so. Men began dying in 1931. The company camps were located on private land away from the town. When workers became too sick to function, they were often transported elsewhere. Deaths occurred in county after county, spread across Virginia and West Virginia, in rooming houses and family homes, in places where no one was counting. In Somersville, a few miles from the tunnel, a funeral director named Hadley White was paid $55 per body to haul black workers away at night and bury them on his mother's farm, more than 25 miles from the tunnel. The graves were unmarked. The families were sometimes not notified before burial. The death certificates frequently listed the cause as pneumonia or tuberculosis or heart failure. Silicosis was not written on certificates from the Hawk's Nest project in any significant number. This was not an accident. Company physicians had examined workers. Several documented the silicosis. Their reports did not reach the families. The tunnel was completed in 1931. Emma Jones was a widow in Gauley Bridge. Her husband, Charlie Jones, had worked inside the tunnel for most of 1930. He died in 1931. He was in his 40s. Emma Jones filed a lawsuit against Reinhardt and Dennis. She received $30. This was not unusual. There were 538 lawsuits filed in total against the two companies. The legal strategy was consistent: challenge the diagnosis, challenge the evidence, delay, and settle for the minimum. The company retained physicians who disputed that silicosis had caused the deaths. Courts in West Virginia were not well equipped to evaluate the medical evidence. Most cases settled out of court. The first group of 157 cases settled for $130,000 combined. Half went to the attorneys. Individual awards ranged from $30 to $1,600. The awards were not equal. A black man who died unmarried, $400. A white man who died married, $1,000. No representative of either company was charged with a crime. While Emma Jones was in a courtroom in West Virginia, Union Carbide was processing silicon ore at its alloy plant downstream. The material extracted during the tunnel's construction, the same high-grade quartz that had filled workers' lungs, had been sold as industrial feedstock. The value of the ore removed from Gauley Mountain during construction exceeded the cost of the tunnel project. The silica paid for the tunnel and returned a profit. The congressional hearings of 1936 were the first time the Hawk's Nest disaster was examined in a national forum. A subcommittee of the House Labor Committee took testimony over several days. Survivors testified, physicians testified. Dr. Leonidas Ryan Harless, who had conducted chest x-rays of affected workers, testified that he had confirmed advanced silicosis in men who had worked in the tunnel less than a year. The company's own physicians had reached the same conclusion. Their findings had not been shared with the workers. The subcommittee produced a report. The report recommended federal occupational safety legislation. The legislation was not passed. Individual states began drafting their own silicosis standards over the following decade. Federal workplace dust limits for silica were not established until 1971, 40 years after the tunnel was completed. A contracting firm continued operating. It received government infrastructure contracts throughout the 1930s. The new Kanawha Power Company was absorbed into Appalachian Power, which is now a subsidiary of American Electric Power. It operates the Hawk's Nest hydroelectric station on the New River today. The generating station has a visitor center. The exact number of deaths connected to Hawk's Nest has never been established. The official figure, compiled from available death certificates and court records in the 1930s, was 476. Investigators at the time believed this was an undercount. The dispersion of workers across multiple states, the mislabeled death certificates, the burials that were not recorded in county files, all of these made a complete count impossible. Some researchers put the number at over 700, others have estimated higher. The range in the literature is wide. What is not in dispute is that men who drilled inside that mountain became sick faster than any comparable group of tunnel workers on record. What is not in dispute is that the company knew the silica content of the rock before the deaths began. The congressional report of 1936 called Hawk's Nest, quote, "the greatest industrial disaster in American history." That phrase appeared in the report. It did not appear in many newspapers. There is a memorial near Summersville, West Virginia, erected in 2012, 80 years after the tunnel was completed. It lists some of the names of the men who died. The list is incomplete. For many workers, the names were never recorded anywhere the families could find them. The tunnel itself does not have a memorial. It has intake gates and flow monitors and a concrete portal reinforced in the 1990s. On a clear day, you can see the opening from the road above the river. In Silicosis, the water moves through it at a rate calculated precisely for power generation. 3 3/4 miles of mountain. The tunnel that killed them is still doing its job. In Gauley Bridge, West Virginia, there is a small historical marker near the junction of Routes 60 and 39. It mentions the tunnel. It mentions the hydroelectric project. It does not mention the number of men buried in the field outside Summersville. Emma Jones received $30. The tunnel has been generating electricity for 93 years. If you'd like to support this channel, subscribing is free and helps more people find this history.